Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks, well, they're available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Today's first encounter. I was walking along a trail near a major city with a friend of mine at around 9:30 p.m. We were walking back to the parking lot after hiking the trail. I didn't see anything at first. My friend was the one who pointed it out. He said, "I think we're being followed," in a joking manner, but then he said, "We need to get out of here right now. There's something wrong with that thing. It's not normal." I looked behind us and saw something very pale or wearing something white and running weirdly slow towards us in a janky, awkward way. It wasn't making any noise, but it seemed like there was a light following it. It was illuminated from above, but there was no street lamps. It looked like it was running fast, but it was slow. So slow that I was able to jog ahead of it and yell at it, and it still could not catch up. It obviously was not a person because of the way it moved and held itself. Its arms were weirdly at its side, and while it ran, its legs were spread in a weird way. It was still chasing us when we got to the parking lot. There was an old man with his dog who obviously saw it. He looked terrified when he saw us running away from it. Another thing I should mention, a lot of these crawler descriptions I have read say they're short and have long faces. This thing was super skinny and short. It couldn't have been over 5 feet. Honestly, I probably could have drop-kicked it into the woods, but I was scared and running away at the time. Anyway, the light and height makes me think it may not have been a crawler, but everything else, the paleness, setting, time of day, facial features, lines up and sounds like a crawler. I couldn't get any pictures or video because I was trying to make sure my phone did not fall out of my pocket while I was running. So something really strange happened while I was recording that. I had actually read or narrated that 5 times. And each time I started recording, I have a Samsung Galaxy, so the assistant is Bixby, not Siri, like Apple. And it would kick in midway. I didn't mention Bixby's name or anything. And it would just make this tone, this kind of bleep, and then start talking to me. I couldn't find what you were talking about. And I didn't activate it. There's a key words that you have to say to activate Bixby. And it was so weird. I actually had to put the phone outside of my studio. I think I'm going to start doing that from now on. But I just found it weird and I wanted to share it with you guys because just weird crap like that's been happening a lot lately. So anyway, on to tonight's second encounter. Tonight's second encounter. My experience happened on March 15th, 2019, in the Bighorn Mountain Range of Wyoming. It happened in a place people here call the Lost Cabin Range. I was on a hunting trip with a buddy of mine. We were both 27 at the time, and my buddy John had gotten a bull elk tag from the draw that year. We drove around all day looking for the elk and only saw one cow that had fallen out of the herd when they moved through. It was starting to get dark, so we started to set up camp for the night. As I was hammering the tent, my buddy had heard what sounded like a woman screaming, and I mean it sounded like someone being murdered in the woods. Of course, when we heard that, we dropped everything we were doing and started looking around to see if we could find this person. We were just about to give up looking when my buddy tapped me on the shoulder and handed me his binoculars. He pointed at the top of the ridge line closest to us. I grabbed the binos and looked at the ridge. I nearly crapped myself. It looked like a man walking up the side, 1 foot in front of the other, but this man had hair. I just thought it was a bear and didn't think much of it because it was moving away from our campsite. We finished setting up and went to bed. At about 1 in the morning, I woke up to some rustling out by my truck. Oh yeah, by the way, my cooler was in the back of the truck, and we planned to stay out there for about a week. But as I was saying, I heard something rustling around my truck. I just thought that it was my buddy getting ready for the day until I looked at his cot and he was still passed out. I woke him up and we decided to just stay in the tent until whatever it was outside went away. We listened as this creature threw our cooler out of the back of my truck. After 10 minutes of listening to this, I finally got fed up with what was going on, so I grabbed my hunting rifle. At this point, both of us were active duty military. I left the tent from the back, so I didn't just run right out the front and scare this creature. I got out and made my way around the corner of the tent. I flew around the corner using my training and turned on my mounted flashlight. The second I turned the light on, I saw this thing shoot up away from the cooler. I won't lie, I've been deployed before, and I've had bullets flying all around me. But this scared me to the point where I almost dropped my rifle. I got a great look at this creature during a couple-minute altercation. It had the face of a man and the feet of a man, but its body was kind of like an oversized gorilla. It had no neck, a conical head. It looked like a Bigfoot from the Patterson film. Standoff lasted maybe 5 minutes, and this thing dropped on all fours and ran very fast. I've never seen anything move that fast. Today's third encounter. When I was about 17 years old, my brother, a friend, and I were hunting in the wilderness behind our subdivision, just south of Laredo, Texas. The area was being developed, so we were walking through wide swaths, about 50 yards of rough dirt that had been bulldozed through the mesquite and palo blanco trees on rolling hills. On either sides of these swaths, that one day would be streets, were huge piles of dead trees, cactus, and grass. It was a gray day, rainy and cold. I think it was December of '83 or January of '84. We were on our way home, walking downhill in the middle of one of these open dirt swaths. Then we saw it. At the very base of the hill, about 30 to 40 yards away, a huge black canine, a dog-like creature, ran from our left to our right, leaving the tangled brush on one side and dashing into the tree pile on the other. The way the animal moved and its shape made me think it was a hyena. However, hyenas are not black. My brother and I just watched as our friend raised his .22 rifle and fired all his ammo at the running creature. He didn't hit anything, he rarely did. He was always a terrible shot and tended to use volume in place of accuracy. We saw the creature for maybe 10 to 15 seconds as it loped across the opening. I never felt frightened, as it never looked towards us. It was just on the move. After it had passed, I turned to my brother, who must have been 12 to 13 at the time, and asked, "What did you see?" "Hyena," he said. "Yeah, me too." We made our way home, and later we continued hunting those woods and never seeing that creature again. I had forgotten about it until I was in grad school in 2010. I was reading Loren Coleman's cryptid site. He had posted a story about the Shunkaworkin, a rare Native American cryptid, a species that had been shot in the 19th century, and its taxidermied body had been displayed in a general store for some time before being lost. The article was about how the specimen had been found, and when I saw that photo, I thought, that's what we saw. I emailed Coleman, saying that I believe that my brother and our friend and myself were the last living people who had seen the Shunkaworkin, relating the same story I just shared. We received no response. I'm a native Texan. My brother and I have been lifelong hunters with guns and bows. We've hunted all over the state and know the animals that are in our woods. This was not one of them. It was not a coyote or a Mexican wolf, and it was no dog. After much research, I think it may have been something like the relic ringdus, a hyena-like canid that existed in the Americas in the past, and is believed to have gone extinct about 10,000 years ago. Additionally, I am not an idiot BSer. We have plenty of those in Texas. I possess a degree in anthropology from the University of Texas in Austin and a master's degree in rhetoric and composition from Texas State University, St. Marcus. Prior to that, I served as a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division for a few years. Today's fourth encounter. About 15 years ago, I heard this weird experience from a buddy. This was in the small town in Oklahoma with a decent-sized native population. Anyway, this guy, an actual Mexican, nicest dude you'd ever want to meet. He was about 35 at the time, had a family, honest, good-natured guy that I could never see making something up for any reason. It was late one night, and we were talking about the abandoned building at campus of a small community college that used to be housing. Supposedly it was haunted. A friend and I wanted to sneak in and check it out. He advised us not to, and mentioned that he had once lived in an apartment on campus there, and some strange stuff had happened. Stuff like hearing footsteps upstairs in a different apartment and a fridge opening and closing. Then someone mentioned the upstairs was empty. He figured someone was squatting there, so at around 1 a.m, he heard it and grabbed his bat. There was a staircase that led up there, so no way someone could have gotten out by the time he had started up. He opened the door, but there was nothing other than an old non-working refrigerator on the opposite end. He didn't stay long after his doors began to open and shut on their own, but he claimed that wasn't nearly as freaky as the last time he was in Mexico. He was driving back to the States after visiting family. His wife was in the passenger seat asleep. He wasn't too far from the border, so he decided to keep driving a little after midnight instead of stopping somewhere to rest for the night. It was sort of desert-type road. He says he was going about 65 when he noticed something in the peripheral vision in the darkness out of the passenger window. Something was out there, and it was keeping up with him. Obviously, it shook him. He hits the gas 70, 75, 80, 85. It was still keeping up. At this point, it was almost too absurd that he thought it was just his tiredness playing tricks on his eyes, until it changed directions. Instead of moving parallel with his car, it began to angle back toward the road in a manner to intercept his vehicle. As it got closer, more light hit it, and he said in no certain terms it looked like a human. It was slightly shadowed from the darkness, but he was certain it was a humanoid form. He accelerated to 90 miles an hour, and a few seconds later angled back into the darkness and was gone. As he finished his story, I could tell his eyes were welled up with tears. His hands were trembling. It was tough. No BS, dude. It physically struck him to his core just to recall it. Not surprisingly, he had never went back to Mexico. Today's fifth encounter. Around 3 a.m. on July 14th, 2020, I had a very terrifying experience. I live in south central Pennsylvania, and I've resided there nearly my entire life. My place of employment is in the college town of Shipsenburg. My job sits on the outlying area of Shipsenburg. A lot of these areas are surrounded by vast farmlands and open fields. Well, this morning, while traveling to start the day, I turned down one of many roads surrounded by fields. It was a half-crescent moon, so there was plenty of light to see in the darkness. As I rounded my turn, I saw what looked like a cow lying in the open field, but this field had no fences or wire to keep livestock in, and it was the only one. I found this very odd, as I'm looking at the broad shoulders of what I thought was a cow. So I broke out my high-powered mag light and brightened up what I was looking at. When my beam hit this creature, it rose up from the ground in a slow, lumbering, and purposeful action. As it came up on all fours, the creature stood at least 5 to 6 feet tall at its shoulder blades. I'm in my truck, I'm elevated, and I sit about that high from the ground. The creature was about 30 feet from me, and I know if I stood toe-to-toe with it, its head would be taller than I, and I'm 6 foot. Now at this moment, the back of this creature is still facing me. It then turned its head into the light, and the lens flared off. Its eyes were a yellowish-green color, and its eyes facing forward. This was a predatory creature, not a damn cow. At that moment, heat and cold washed over my body, and I felt a real genuine life-threatening fear take over. I didn't move, sitting in the middle of the road, knowing I'm low on the pecking order of the food chain at this very second. It continued to measure me for what felt like forever, and it suddenly turned its head and tore off faster than I could know. My pathetic guess is maybe 30 to 40 miles an hour as it darted away. And after all this, the only thing I could think was that it was a giant hyena, the most terrifying real-life creature I ever witnessed, and it was gone fast. It's been on my mind all day, and I had to share it with someone. This creature looked at me like it was staring at its next meal. Now I work in the darkness most of the time. You bet your ass I'm looking over my shoulder. Tonight's sixth encounter. I had a very strange and scary experience with something that may have been a weird creature / cryptid. It happened on August 1st, 2020. I was at my girlfriend's house for the weekend, which I'm at her house pretty much every weekend, Friday through Sunday. So that's not out of the ordinary. We both recently started college, so she still currently lives with both her mom and dad and 2 younger brothers. It was between 3:40 a.m. and 4:15 when the actual creepy stuff started. Everyone else in the house was asleep except for my girlfriend and I, since we always tend to stay up late playing video games and watching movies. We had just finished watching a movie and were getting ready to go to sleep. I was getting changed into shorts and a t-shirt to sleep in. My girlfriend went to the kitchen to get us both a glass of water, since her room can get extremely hot and stuffy during the summer. So after getting changed, I'm just chilling on the beanbag in her room, waiting for her to get back. At that point, I should explain the basic layout of where she lives, or this next part could get a bit confusing. Her house is about 8 minutes out of city limits. She has a long driveway that goes from the road up a hill that leads to her house. Her house is surrounded by trees in a fairly dense forest, and her nearest neighbor is a good couple of minutes away. At the end of the driveway is a motion sensor that, when activated by movement, makes 3 loud beeps inside the house. Her dad is fairly high-ranking military, so he definitely takes precautions and safety measures to ensure his family's safety. So like I said before, she's in the kitchen alone between 3 and 4 a.m. And I was still in her bedroom. Her kitchen is down the hallway and through the living room from where her bedroom is. So she should have been back just in a couple of minutes. She was taking at least triple the amount of time. And right before I was going to head to the kitchen to check on her, she walked around the corner with a worried look on her face. She can be spooked pretty easy, so I wasn't that alarmed. She handed me the water and started to quickly explain what had taken her so long. She pretty much said that while she was in the kitchen getting the water, she heard a whining sound from outside the 2 windows next to the sink. She figured it was one of her 2 dogs and decided to go to the garage and check on them. They were both curled up in their kennel when she opened the door asleep and had only just been awoke by her turning the light on to check on them. She told me at this point she's pretty confused and slightly uneasy. She walked back in the kitchen and heard this really deep, weird bark come again from somewhere outside the kitchen windows. Please note, this is 3 to 4 in the morning, so it's nearly pitch black outside, especially since the dense trees around her house block out a lot of the moonlight. She told me she couldn't see anything, and she hurried back to the room to tell me. I was slightly skeptical at first, since I assumed it was in fact just the dogs, and my girlfriend was just really tired and tripping out. I agreed to go back to the kitchen with her. At first, I heard nothing for a good couple of minutes, so I decided to try and recreate what she had done. I walk in, turn on the sink, and wait. After another 2 minutes go by, I hear the same whining sound coming from outside of the windows. It sounded so much like a wounded animal. I had her turn on the lights in the garage again, which slightly lit up the area outside the windows, but again, no sign of any animals or anything. She turns the light off, and we hear the whining sound getting further away, almost as if the creature had fled up the hill near the kitchen and toward the forest. This was when we realized it was scared or sensitive to lights, so we left the kitchen and went back to her room. At this point, I was pretty spooked, and I wanted to make sure that whatever it was had been scared off for good. So we go back into the kitchen after a few minutes, both armed with decently sized knives that my girlfriend has in her room for protection. 5 minutes go by in the kitchen, and it's silent. But then the whining starts up again, and then the weird barking sound like something imitating an injured animal was maybe 10 feet outside the kitchen window. And in that moment, I realized something. There's no reason some creature would try to imitate an injured animal sound unless it was trying to lure us out and cause us harm. So I get slightly upset at that, and I start yelling for it to go away. It went silent, and I hear this very slight movement outside the window, and then a weird sound, almost as if something was moving alongside the wall right under the window. Then, whatever it was, lets out this really disturbing, unnatural sound, almost like a loud, groaning growl hybrid. Let me tell you, my girlfriend and I looked at each other and just sprinted out of the kitchen without a single word. We hid in her room until we passed out some point at 6 a.m. We talked it over, listened to a ton of animal noises, and not a single one got anywhere close to the final unnatural sound we had heard. I wouldn't even be able to accurately mimic the sound. It was so eerie and haunting, and I can still hear it in my head. So we did some research the next day, and there were a few known possibilities we came up with. Werewolf, Dogman, shapeshifter, who knows? We looked around outside in the morning, and there was no blood, no tracks, so definitely not an injured animal. However, on the hill about 10 feet in front of the kitchen windows, we saw 2 heavy indents in the ground, and then flattened grass leading up. We decided to tell one of my girlfriend's brothers about the experience so that he could help test something. We had one person go inside the kitchen to the sink near the windows, and the others walk around in various different places near the windows and make sounds to try and triangulate where the creature had been standing. We concluded it was at one point no more than 5 feet from the windows, and then at another point fled up the hill, which matched with the trampled grass and indents leading up the hill. Further up the hill, there's a path that branches, and one part of the path is fairly abandoned and overgrown. Nobody had walked there in at least 2 years, and I followed it till its end, and kept going a little further looking for tracks. I did manage to find something interesting. 3-foot tall ferns that brambles almost completely flattened, and a few twigs snapped perfectly in half, as if something decently large had walked through the area in a hurry, and it seemed very recent. We then decided to tell my girlfriend's parents about it, and her dad seemed especially interested. He told us that the wood panels on their pump house had been torn off within a couple of last days. He then took one of the dogs into the woods. We assumed he went to check for any signs. He came back, and about 2 days later he installed a camera right next to the kitchen window where we heard those sounds. Again, he's high-ranking military, and 100% believed that something was there that night. All right, everyone. Tonight I have DJ with us, and a couple of nights ago, DJ was on here and he shared an experience that his wife's cousin had. He was out hunting, and he had a very terrifying experience that left him up in his tree stand and probably never hunting again. DJ, how are you, buddy?
I'm blessed, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. So your wife's cousin was out hunting in Carroll County?
Yeah, it was her friend's cousin.
Oh, friend's cousin. I'm sorry. And he was about 25 feet in the tree stand, just so people who hadn't heard this can kind of get the feel of what happened. He was using one of those straps that you wrap around the tree to climb his tree.
Yeah, it's climber, self-climber.
Self-climber. So he's up in his tree stand. He's got a muzzle loader because it's muzzle loading season. And he then sees a Dogman that terrifyingly traps him in a tree. He's got his sidearm with him, 38 special, you said?
Yes, sir. My Smith & Wesson 38 special.
Shoots it in kind of the collarbone region at a downward angle.
Right.
And the creature, he unloads on it. And so he's got no more rounds in his revolver. All he's got is his muzzle loader. He's trapped up there. He waits until morning. His sister ends up getting worried because he doesn't call her or notify her or anything, and they're very close. And he, as he's leaving the area, a park ranger or DNR, the forest police, comes looking for him, and he lets the forest policeman know, hey, I saw this thing. I had my sidearm. He almost got a ticket because it's illegal to have a sidearm or any kind of protection with you while you're muzzle loading, which is very stupid.
Yes, it is.
It just doesn't make any sense to me, DJ, because you live down that way. You've seen, what's in those woods, minus any cryptids,
Yeah.
There's been accounts of panthers being in there, bobcat, whatever.
Black bear's made an abundant rebound since the 70s. It's almost to the point now that they're going to have to keep a 6-month-old season on their cementing.
Really?
Yeah, that's overrun with black bear.
Coyotes
in packs.
Yep, nuisance coyotes are. And so the DNR copper threatens to give him a ticket. Or did he give him a ticket or no? Just a warning?
He started writing him,
Okay.
and he got so mad and irritated at him. He's give him a lecture,
Right.
telling him, he don't know nothing. He don't know what's here in these woods. I pay, just short. Make a long time short, he just told him he paid his taxes. I reckon he was a young man, just hadn't been out of the training, out of the program, maybe 4 or 5 months, and he's a little, wet behind the ears. Didn't have the people skills he developed yet, and he just sort of laid into him. And he actually slapped the book out of his hand, and the guy they had heated words, and, he just let him have it. But, he's a Christian man. He let him have it in a godly way, and the guy ended up apologizing. And, the only thing I know he wrote down what he said is he had his, he had his ID, and he wrote that down, name and all that information, and that's as far as he got.
Okay.
And then, he said he'd never hunt again. He couldn't pay him to hunt these woods in Virginia or any other state around here surrounding us. And a couple days later, he has some visitors show up on his front door.
Yeah. So what happened? What's that all about?
He never knowed what they were affiliated with. He said the car was black. He said it was what was that, Crown Victoria, tinted windows, government tags, unmarked, tinted windows, antennas all over it. And he said 2 of them come up knocking on his door, and he said both of them were dressed in black BTUs, and their name was, he said their Velcro was a place where you Velcro their name or whatever.
Okay.
That was gone. There was no identifying marks on them. Both of them had sunglasses. He said they were jarhead, the Marine style haircuts. He let them in, and they wanted to know about, what he's seen in the woods, and he acted like he said actually filled out a report. One of them was asking questions, the other one was writing. And he said they wanted to know about, the size and the hour and approximately where you were at when he seen the bear. And he stopped him right there. He said, I did not see no bear. He said, yes, sir. How big? He said he kept leading him on. He'd start a sentence in a paragraph, starting out leading him saying bear. Well, 5, 6 different ways. And finally, in the end, he just went along with it. Said, well, the bear, blah, blah, blah. And he told him, he said, well, it's best for everybody concerned, that you don't tell nobody about this. It was a bear. You seen nothing but a bear. You had trouble with a bear. And we'll leave it at that.
Wow.
And he said they just put off a bad vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a real good soft-spoken man until you get him riled, but he said it was just the way they acted and, the feeling he got off the way they are. He said it was like an elephant in the room.
Yep.
And the way they talked to, he said that he said it louder when it's best for everybody concerned. So he got the point right away, but, now he's feeling unsafe. He said now he don't want to worry more about ever running back into them things or the people who trying to hide them.
Right. Right.
He said, I might as well take my chances with one of them in the woods versus these 2 people.
that park police there, he had commented and said that it was probably a coyote. And then at the end said it was a bear or whatever. But, I mean, It seemed like he was saying more of a coyote.
Right.
From what you had said earlier. And then now it seems like this DNR or whatever you guys call them down there went back, probably filled out the incident report, because there was a missing person or whatever.
Right.
So he had to fill out an incident report and then probably talk to his boss, and his boss had to notify
these guys,
the right people. Yeah. And
the MIB, the obvious men in black.
Yeah, and then the old bear, air quotes. You saw a bear.
He said every time. He said it was either 5 or 7 times. The guy would start writing, how the temperature of this tree was so many feet tall and it was so many far from the southeast, and then the bear, and he'd always throw the bear in there, and then he'd stop, and he said after a while he just got tired and went along with it.
Right.
Because he said the last time he said bear, and he stopped him and interrupted the guy. He said the guy actually pulled his sunglasses off and put them on the inside of his jacket or his BDU upper and said, "It's best for everybody concerned. You seen a bear."
Huh.
And explained to him, it's best for everyone concerned, including yourself and everybody else, that you seen a bear. And he said, "Trust me, you don't want the eyes that'll see this report. You don't want knowing, that you stand up and see or what you saw." He said, "There's so many things people can do today." He said, "If this got out to your nerve, they think you was a laughing stock." He said, "With something like that," he said, "you would end up in a rubber room in a straitjacket."
Right.
Insinuating, that basically just a tip of the spear. They could do whatever they want. And ain't nothing they could do about it.
Huh. Yeah, that's just kind of strange that,
Mm-hmm.
2-3 days. What? No, it was on a Saturday or a Sunday that this happened. The first
This
incident
was on a Saturday.
that he had gotten lost or gotten stuck in the tree thing.
Right. It was over the weekend, and the last time my wife spoke to his cousin, I think that was Tuesday.
Right.
And as soon as I found out, Tuesday or Wednesday, that's when I contacted you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So he's so confused, right now that he don't know which way to turn.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
The only thing he says, like you said the last time, he said, "I'll turn to the Bible and the Lord will light my path." He said, "That's all I can say."
Wow. What? I'm sorry.
Oh, and then he went on. He's one of these type that, I'm not saying it's there. I'm not saying it's not what's going on, but he's piecing now that he called it a demon. Might be the way we're in the last days as times change by the Bible. He's thinking these are the last days, and these things are becoming known to man and seeing the eyes for the first time because time is running out.
Right.
Just like you did a piece here a week or two ago, on the Euphrates. He's actually doing research on that right now.
Yeah.
He thinks these things are spawn of was it Nephilim or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got some freaky ideas, but he was just caught completely off guard by this.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's definitely something you don't expect to just have show up at your door. A couple of men in black. "Hey, how are you?"
And he said they were armed.
Yeah.
He said each one of them had a handgun on their side. He just said the vibes he got off of it, just by looking at them, he could tell that they weren't there for, a vote of confidence party.
Right. Absolutely. Well, if you ever talk to the fella, like I said before, let him know that he's not alone. And, that to just really not give in,
Exactly.
Continue hunting, just be extra careful and, really don't give in to, the BS,
Yeah. Don't give it to
he lets people know,
don't let him be stereotyped or stigmatized by everything else he hears or sees.
Well, I'm saying not to be afraid of these people. To let people know that, hey, these people came to my home,
Well, he's already said they're not shutting him up.
Right. Good.
He's one of these people that believes in the Constitution, free speech.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm not doing nothing wrong."
No, he hasn't, and that's a good thing. It's a good attitude to have.
Well, I think these people that work for whatever alphabet government agency, they want you to think that you've done something wrong, that you're under their thumb, that they can crush you with a swipe of a key. And the fear, you don't instill fear in somebody in our own country.
Well, the government's done that ever since it existed.
Oh yeah, ever since it existed, but
it's not going to stop, and it never will. But I really think that the more people speak up and don't become sheltered, don't be afraid of disappearing, the more people you tell, the less chance you have to disappear.
Yeah, because it'd be too many dots and I's missing and too many T's crossed.
Exactly. That's why I don't really, I've gotten like one, maybe two weird things that have happened, but realistically, the more people you tell, the less it's going to happen. The quieter
Exactly.
you are, the shut in you are, that's when they can come and intimidate you and strike fear into your heart.
Right. Being in the know is what protects you.
Yep. Yep. All right, buddy. Do me a favor. Don't hang up. I want to talk to you a little bit after this. Thank you for keeping us in the loop on this, and let that guy know that I'm praying for him, and I'm sure that anyone that hears this will be praying for him as well, and we've got his back.
Yeah, I sure will. He appreciates that.
All right, DJ, you have yourself a wonderful day and have yourself a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, I sure will, buddy. You do the same.
All right, brother. Be well.
Yep, will do.
There you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this early morning, middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.